Well, if you like to photograph airplanes, then there's no better place to come than the Ljubljana Airport. It's not the greatest airport, not the busiest airport, but it is the one you can get closest to. There are few airports around the world that you can actually get right up against the fence here and no more than 50 meters or 100 meters away from the runway. It's the perfect viewpoint. Now maybe the Ljubljana International Airport, and many fairly big planes do come in here, but it's also a regional airport, so you also get lots of small planes landing here and light aircraft, private jets, and also people learning to fly, so it's a great place. As you can see, the fence is not really that high, so some people I've seen have actually come here with a step ladder, climbed up on the top of the step ladder, and they can get their cameras over the top of the barbed wire to get some clear shots of the planes actually taking off and landing on the runway. Or you can do what I used to do and stand on the roof of your car. So there's another road, the road goes down the side here too, so you can go further down, actually get closer to the side of the runway there and to the actual airport terminal, and you can park your car right next to the fence. And like I said, I used to stand on the roof of my car so I could get a clear shot over the fence. I'll show you some of the pictures from that now. Swissair! Well, that was Swissair from Zurich arriving. So you can see you got all sorts of airplanes arriving at this airport, and you get a really great view of the lot. What's also great about this airport is, although you can't see it now because there's quite a lot of cloud cover, but the Kamnikaups are actually right behind the airport and right in your viewpoint. From certain areas you can get the planes coming in, landing with the beautiful Kamnikaups right behind it. I'll show you some photos from previous shoots. But right about here is Krvavec, a ski resort in the winter, and the Kamnikaups, the Storžič is right over there, and the Kamnikaups stretch right the way along here. So this is a fantastic place to come if you love to photograph airplanes, if you love to photograph mountains, or even better, if you love to photograph airplanes with mountain backdrops. This is the place to be. Now, although it's Ljubljana Airport, it's not actually in Ljubljana like most airports. It's about a 20-minute drive from Ljubljana. It's north of Ljubljana, and it's actually in a little village called Brnik. Now, it's easy to get to. As I showed you, we're on a little gravel road, and this gravel road goes right the way around the outer fence of the airport itself. It's easy to drive in, nobody bothers you. You know, I've parked right up there, I've used my big telephoto lens. Security have come driving around from the inside of the airport. No one's ever said anything to me about it, so they're obviously quite used to it. And a lot of locals come up here too to watch the airplanes, and also local photographers come to take pictures too. So it's easy to get to. There are two ways in. You can take the motorway from Ljubljana. You can either turn off at a little village called Vodice and take one of the little back roads up around here to come in from this side. And another one's coming, hold on. Now, how to photograph the airplanes? Well, if you want to get up close, you need a good zoom telephoto. This is a 100-400 Canon L series lens. But most important is your shutter speed. Of course, planes are moving fast. If you don't want any motion blur, you need a fast shutter speed. Now, I've been shooting at 1,000th of a second at f10 with my ISO set to 400. Now, the reason I do that is to really ensure that I get a good fast shutter speed and everything is well exposed. Light changes quite often, and you can see as the plane moves in, you're moving around, and the areas where you're shooting can be lighter or darker depending. Sometimes you're against the clouds, sometimes you're against the blue sky, and as you turn around this way where the sun is, it's getting brighter. So it's very important to ensure that even if you turn into a darker area, your shutter speed is not too slow. So I use full manual here because the light is fairly consistent, but when the light's not fairly consistent, then I tend to use the shutter priority mode, because that's what's important. It's important that you get a fast shutter speed. So if I set my shutter speed to 1/1000th of a second, put the ISO up well to about 400 or even higher if the light is lower, and then let the camera take the light readings as you're shooting, and it will adjust the aperture accordingly. As you're going in close, you don't really need a large depth of field, so it's not so important if in one of your shots the camera's set a larger aperture, because you're going in close. Okay, so they're my tips for photographing airplanes. From this area, not only, as I said, you can photograph the airplanes and the mountains. So if you go right the way over there, in one of my previous videos I showed you this, but if you go right the way over there, and when it's really super clear, looking this way, you can see the Julian Alps in the west and Mount Triglav, which is the highest mountain in Slovenia. When it's really, really clear, especially in the summer, you get the sun setting over the Julian Alps or close to the Julian Alps, and you get some really, really beautiful sunset shots. I'll stick a couple of them up here now. And then looking this way, as I said, which is more eastward, you get the Kamnik Alps. So from that viewpoint over there, it's really great when it's clear, because you can swing between the Julian Alps, the Kamnik Alps, and maybe catch a few airplanes coming in at the same time. So you can go to the Ljubljana Airport and find out when the arrivals and departures are for the planes on a given day that you want to visit. Of course, we're in the middle of a pandemic, so it's not the busiest airport at the best of times, but it's even less busy now. But there are still some planes coming in and out. The airports, the website's in both Slovene and English. If you go on the mobile, it's interesting, there's an option to translate it to English, and for departures it said he flew away. So it'll give you a bit of a giggle anyway. But even you know, the website will show you the arrivals and the departures for the commercial airlines, but even in between that, as you've just seen, there's lots of smaller private planes, light planes, and all sorts coming in and out of the airport. And even a helicopter. There's a police helicopter base over there. You sometimes get the police and the army helicopters coming in over the airport, flying in and out and around the mountains. Here comes a little plane. A little plane coming.
Yeah. Here he comes. Here, quick, quick, quick. They're going home.
Now you may wonder why I went and I photographed through the fence. Well, there's another useful little trick. If you can't get above the fence to shoot over the fence, then you can shoot through it in a very particular way. You need to obviously have a good zoom, ideally, zooming in close. Well, I was zooming in at 400 so I could catch the plane landing on the runway itself. And you use a large aperture and then put the camera right up close to the fence. And this way you minimize or almost completely eliminate any chance of the fence appearing in the picture, because everything will be so out of focus, you're so up close and your aperture's so large that it'll throw everything so out of focus that it completely disappears. Okay, so a useful tip for you. We'll do that when the next big plane lands. Now there's a good example of how the light can change very quickly, and if you're not set up properly you can have problems like I wasn't. I didn't quite have the ISO up high enough for 1/1000th of a second, and so it took the aperture open as wide as it could, but it wasn't wide enough. So that image facing that way, because all of a sudden the sun went behind a thick bank of cloud and the light changed completely. And so the images of the plane landing and the last one were a little underexposed. So now it's getting later and the sun has gone behind a very thick layer of cloud. The light levels have dropped. So in that case, because I'm set to ISO, because I'm set to a shutter speed of 1/1000th of a second, I'm probably not even at its widest aperture. It's not going to be enough. So now I'm going to have to put my ISO up, probably to about ISO 1000 or maybe higher, just to make sure that my image isn't underexposed like the last one. Okay, I think this is the big one, or maybe not, we'll see. I've taken my ISO up to 1600 and I've actually taken my shutter speed down to about 1/800th, but still fast enough. It's not the big one, sounds like a prop. Yeah. Now the thing about the little planes with the propellers, if you get the shutter speed just right, you can catch some movement on the propellers, which is quite a good thing because it gives a sense of motion. Now 1/800th of a second on that little plane worked just perfectly. I'll show you that picture right now. That's a good example why it's good to have the shutter priority mode, because shooting this way against the bright sky, then at 1/800th of a second at ISO 2000 I can get an f10, but as soon as I turn around this way it's much darker, and when I'm shooting there I'm dropping right down to f6, well f5.6 actually, the lowest I can go, or slightly above that. So when you're shooting in manual mode, it's not always easy to make those quick adjustments when all this is happening fast. So that's why sometimes these creative modes are quite useful. Now, another one's coming. Another small one! I see it! It's another small one coming. Well, it's another day and it's Friday, and this evening it's much busier. Many more planes coming in, and British Airways is due to land in about 15-20 minutes. So it's looking good. So, back again another day. It's Friday and still no sign of the mountains. Completely cloud covered. But Friday evening, much busier at the airport. More planes coming in, and in 10 minutes we're also expecting British Airways that's coming from London to land here, and it will take off again at 7:15, so that'll be quite a feast. British Airways is coming! That was British Airways. Perspective makes a big difference. Now down there, for most of those other shots, I was shooting right close because the airplanes are literally coming over your head, which is pretty cool actually. But it also means that most of your angles are shooting upwards as you see it, or shooting like this, you know. So by coming a bit further down the field, now I can shoot the planes coming in at a bit of a less of a steep angle, so get a slightly different perspective, slightly different kind of shot. So for the next plane that's coming in, we'll shoot from here. Well, there you have it. If you like to photograph airplanes, then the Ljubljana Airport is the place to be. You can get super close to the runway and super close to the airplanes landing and taking off sometimes too. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and stay tuned for future videos. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.